as to what this is doing, because as
So,
far as I
well,
know,
well, hold on. Well,
oh,
so the get data thing, that's a conversation for Zizix. He's the one that said it about it being expensive. So I'm not 100% sure I even understand what he means in that regards.
mhm.
So
So get data is a function that's called automatically for the most part. We just append shit to it. That way, when we want to get that data, we can get the correct data. Like that, it's not necessarily expensive, I don't think.
yeah, I guess the question is calling this dot get data. If we're doing that anywhere, is it more efficient to just access this data? For to me, I believe accessing this data is probably more efficient than jumping to a function to get the data.
That returns the object.
Yeah,
I mean, I'd agree. I think that is correct. But I don't think it's so expensive that it's costing us anything in terms of like making our readability a bit more clear.
yeah.
There's
Maybe he
another
saw
purpose for get
something.
data because we use it elsewhere too, not just to like, take shortcuts. The purpose of get data is so that way, really, it's like role data, right? Like it's the function is there, so you have a way to get like just the data object for an item or an entity, really, and to pass that data object around so you could do things with it, like to clone it or create more things or to update it, etc. Right?
Yeah. Why don't we wait till he joins and we can ask him? Maybe he saw something that it was um taking extra cycles than it should. I don't know.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Um, okay, so if we're rolling dice, the dice are going to be black, and on a critical, it's a red die, right?
Yeah, I think that's the consensus of what we're gonna
So
do.
then so is the critical die red? Like all of the next die that gets rolled, is it red or is it black?
It's, if I'm not mistaken, though, it's the inverse of that right now, isn't it? Like all the dice are red right now, like the icons that pop up.
Sometimes I know that sometimes they're rolled black. I mean, sometimes they're rolled. I think they're rolled red, all, and then sometimes black.
Hold on, I'm trying to log into my table just to double check. I think they're black on a crit right now.
Yeah.
Okay. So I made the D10s in black with the 10 being red. I made a 10. I made a black 10 for those who don't want auto calculating crits,
Mm-hmm.
and then I've made a red 10 for the preem for if it crits. I also made a black that has a blood splatter for fails. But if they roll a 1, what color is the die that gets rolled afterwards? Or if they, I mean, like what's the next die that gets rolled, right?
It's red for both.
Is a red?
Yeah. Yep.
Red for fail and crit.
Yep. Currently.
Okay. So then I've already made red dice, but then I made a 10 that says preem. But I also made a 10 that has a blood spatter, because if you roll a 1 and you roll a 10 afterwards, that 10 is not great.
Correct. That 10 is
Right?
worse. That 10 is the
10
worst
is
one you can
worse.
get. Yeah.
Also, when you roll a death save, if you roll a 10, you die.
hmm
If we want to get weird about this, we should just build sets of these variants, like the red set, the black set, the red preem, the black preem, and the blood splatter set.
Yeah. So I have a set of red and I have a set of black, right? I have a blood splatter 1 in black, and I have a blood splatter 10 in red.
You see what I'm saying? Like rather than do like just the onesie twosies for the blood splatter or the preem, do just the whole set, and then we could have just that whole like repository of assets, and then that we never have to ask for more. Do you know what I'm saying? Because we
Okay,
don't
so
really know what, like, we might give this to users and they might tell us to change it, and then you're making more late down the road. Just rather just get ahead of it. You know what I mean?
Well, either way, the whole set of red is done, like normal red, normal
Nice.
black is done. There's a red preem. I have a black preem.
Nice.
I have a 1 with blood splatter in black. I can make a red. And like I thought I'm just gonna I'm gonna make a 1 of red with blood splatter and preem. I'm gonna make a black of red with blood splatter and preem. And then I'll do the same thing with the 10s.
Yep. Exactly. Right. Because those are the 2 edges. So those are the only thing that'll ever need it. And I know it doesn't make sense to have a 1 that says preem, but like what we're really doing is we're just building a repository.
When you fail, right, and you get that 1, right, but then you roll another 1, you're like, oh, okay.
That's true. That's like the best failure. That's a good point. All right. Well, that's fucking rad, dude. I thank you. Do you have can you post them up? Do you have anything you show us?
No, I mean I stopped to ask this question so that I knew whether I needed to make these extra ones.
Oh, okay.
But I do have already the other ones, like the full sets of both ready. I just need to adjust some to make the extra ones.
There's a couple pictures you posted in the dev chat too. If you scroll up.
Yeah. I thought we were gonna do this on the Discord too, so I would have been able to just bring up my screen and people would have been able to see it.
You can share screen here.
Dude, your D10 gangster lean like looks so good.
Well, here's the thing: I can't share screen on my phone.
Oh, you're on here on your phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, your gangster lean D10 is pretty sweet.
Yeah, I'm really excited for that. I was just like, hey, this is good shit. But yeah, so I finished that. It pretty much takes care of that 1 card of the new dice, of like the SVG files for the dice. I made them a size that I made them SVGs, so you can resize them if you want, but I also tried to make them nice and tight and small so that we could better organize the cards. Because I feel like the cards are too big and blocky. There's too much white space that's not being used, and the information that's being displayed there, I think, could be better displayed.
Absolutely. I agree too, because I would want to see a more condensed, like, instead of like a square layout, more like a rectangular layout, honestly.
Yes. Rectangular layout, and even, okay, so you know how when you roll regular dice without like anything from a sheet.
Oh, how it has the like double click open up menu.
Yeah. I like that because it allows you to expand if you really need to see like the breakdown, or keep it closed. So automatically it's like closed and just gives you your results, right? But if you really want to see the breakdown of what's inside of that roll result, then you click on it and it expands, and and then that way you could have your modifier, your base, and whatever.
I dig that, right? Because then what we'd really see in the rectangle would be the 2 D10s, right, laid out horizontally, and the total to the right of them. Yes. And then a drop down, right, that opens up and reveals that will, skill, whatever, right? The details of how we got to 28, and if it's right, then you don't care about that. You just trust that 28 is what you got, and the GM can inspect. And then at the bottom underneath that would be the button that would be to roll damage if it's an attack.
Roll damage. Yep.
Yeah, it's making this more modular, and I think that would still work for the D6, because like you said, if you make them much more smaller, that big number still fits there, and like you could just have that array of D6 in that upper left area.
Yeah, and the thing is also, by making the way that I made them, that has like a nice big white number in the middle, I was able to reduce them from 60 by 70 from 77 pixels to almost like, I think 52 to 52.
let's get really weird here, and I'm gonna see what it looks like when we roll 20d6 for damage.
I was just about to say the D6 gets tricky because the number of dice you can roll can be pretty crazy.
Did you already add them?
Yeah, so d6 are displaying.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that's using the font awesome one, right?
yeah.
But what size is the font awesome ones? You know,
we have it set to like some text like EM. I think it's whatever normal is for us.
Okay.
It's not a pixel size. It's like a font size, right?
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
But either way, because they're SVGs, they can stretch. It's just that they maintain the pixel fidelity.
They do math.
So if you like expand them, they still look like cool pixel dice.
Nice.
So they don't get blurred up.
What else we got on here? So that one's knocked out. Naming conventions. Okay, really, this was more for Zizix as well, and I think he had the question, and then for Darren. Static functions. If we have a static function, it should be capitalized. It follows like the capitalization case because it doesn't require instantiation. So technically, you could import just the function and not have to do the class dot function name. That's really where this matters. I've just noticed we did that a lot. Non-static member functions adhere to like lowercase, or camel case. I mean, or is it Pascal case? What is it? I think it's Pascal case. Not camel case. Camel case is what I'm thinking of. That's like non-static member functions are camel case, and then that's really it. That's all we need to know. Everything else has been like relatively good.
Now, what about private functions? They start with an underscore, right?
I would like to do private functions with an underscore, but that's like just a node thing, like a JavaScript thing, and people started doing. I like it because there's no way, like you still have access to them. It's just helper to the dev. So when he's calling it and he sees that underscore come up in the list, he knows that it's supposed to be a private function. So it probably won't behave the way they want it to.
Okay. Well, I mean, let's just try to adhere to that.
Yeah.
Because I know we do have a bunch of functions that do start with underscore. So a task can be to go through and make sure that we adhere to these standards, right? And then going forward as we design things, we stick with that.
I haven't done a thorough like look through of the code in a while, so I can't really speak to a code review, but I would. Did we ever do the great migration and get all that stuff out of the actor sheet, or is that still on the taskbar?
A lot of it got moved because I had to move it with doing the macros.
Okay.
Like I had to move things off the item, off the actor. I'm going to take it as a task for myself to go through and see what else needs to be moved to the appropriate areas.
Okay. And then the changelog, Jalen. Jalen's here, isn't he? Yeah.
Dude, that was super helpful. Because I was like, how the hell are we going to come up with all this crap? But then, then I saw your document.
Yeah. Happy to do it. Just hopefully I caught everything, but I'm sure there's a few things that
a bit unrelated, but like something that this is important for, right? So we're gaining quite a notoriety like within the Foundry community. I'm sure everyone's aware of this. Like even the Foundry staff folks have been like pinging me and being like, hey, I know some people that are using your system now, and they're basically saying like it's the system to use for Cyberpunk, and we have people like John who's definitely on board. And then I mean, it really is like the system to use if you're playing Cyberpunk Red. As terrible of an RPG as it is, like this is the system you should use when you play it. So like having things like this in place, like these kinds of change logs, so we can go back and show people like the work that we've done, and we can have something to follow forward, is like, it seems silly or whatever, needless, but this is hyper important, Jalen. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Onto like probably the most important thing to discuss, which is like what we're focusing on and what's like considered phase 2, which is like phase 1. What we got done was really like the core of the game, like rolling dice, getting character sheets somewhat organized, a core design settled on, right, that we can follow and iterate over, getting weapon and equipment working so you have an inventory that you can manage, you have cyberware that you can manage. The next step on top of that is going to be net running, which really encompasses quite a few things: cyberdex programs, black ice demons, net architectures themselves. And then on top of phase 2, the other big thing I want to tackle is the Mooks sheets and finishing our design implementation. So there's a few things we missed that on the design that we didn't really focus on. One of them being weapon cards and how they should appear in on the fight tab. The fight tab itself kind of needs cleaned up. Another part of the design element we didn't really focus on, mind you, we didn't really have a design for it because we didn't know exactly what it was going to look like, was the roles tab, or I think it's, we call it the role tab. So that could use some improvement. And then the life path tab. I think the life path tab is relatively well done. I like the opening of the editor. I don't believe any of these text boxes need to be draggable. They should be scrollable instead, or static to where like they have a character limit, one of the two, just to prevent weird CSS stuff where you can drag the thing off the screen and then you can't then bring that text box back to not be off the screen after you've done that without closing it, opening it. It's just to prevent weird things like that. And that is in the life path screen when you click the wrench and you open up all of these boxes.
Yeah, so with the life path though, so the original template that was created for the life path, some of the items in there are in there as an array of items. What's the plan?
You're talking about data model?
Yeah, I'm sorry, the
we
data
might
model.
just need to change that, to be honest. I think we did that because there was like a list of them that you pick.
Yeah, so friends, tragic love affairs, and enemies are all
because you
arrays.
can have multiple inputs of those. It was the thing, right?
Right. Yeah, I think that's what the plan was.
You can have up to 3 of them.
But is the plan to just list like friends and just list a name there, or do we want an object in there of like do we want a structure where it's the name, relation to you, or something like? Is there extra data points we want to keep in that as a defined object, right?
I think we could backpedal and remove the array aspect. And what we're doing here in LifePath, where everything is basically just a text field, is what we need to do everywhere for all of these kinds of inputs, because it gives the user like control over how they want to organize that information.
Right. I can't. That's
fields, and they can just add whatever text inside.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was kind of leaning towards making a free form text, because really the life path isn't something. Life path is like background story, right? So they can really type whatever they want in there. But all right, so we'll change that
and
as
if
part of
anything
phase
doesn't
2.
fit, you can just throw it in the notes section.
Yep.
You know, like that's, and the notes is like fully formattable, which is really nice as well.
And I think I like everywhere we're using TinyMCA, I think is kind of coming along. I haven't had too many issues. I haven't tried to do copy pasting of like any big things yet, but it's fine. And I gotta say, I hate Cyberpunk Red so much right now. The other day I spent 30 minutes writing a GitLab issue for us because I thought humanity was calculating incorrectly because I forgot how humanity worked. So I'm glad that our system works, but I'm wondering if we can make it work in a way that makes it more obvious that it's working correctly, right?
Are you referring to like how the max humanity loss is calculated? And
yes,
stuff?
So max humanity loss is based on the number of cyberware we have installed. And if you have 3, then it would be, -6, 2 per, right? So my max humanity is, say, 78. My current humanity is 67. My empathy is set based on my current humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, why can't I reset this back up to 80? Like I'm trying to put my empathy back to 8 so I could start over. And it took me like literally 40 minutes to remember that that's how it worked. I'm just wondering what we can do about this to make the rules of the game more obvious so people know we are doing it right and they don't fall into that trap.
I think on the cyberware install dialog, like when you're installing cyberware and it says like, how do you want to roll it? You know, like that kind of thing. I think there could be a little message there that says like, just, remember that installing cyberware takes away from your max humanity. I think that could be at least one little thing that is at least a reminder. We could even put the page number, like go look at this page to see what we're talking
also,
about.
I think the maximum number here where it says 74, that should not be an editable field at all. But what should happen is when we hover over that.
Are you sharing a screen?
No, I'm just kind of looking at the Foundry thing. I can't share right now either.
Oh, okay.
When we hover over that number, the max, instead of being able to edit it, maybe we get a tooltip that shows the total reduction you're incurring and why. So it'll say like you have 8 cyberware and 2 Borgware for a total of whatever on the tooltip. And then like we have now where if you click humanity, it'll force the recalculation to occur. So it'll basically force that calculation of like where your max should be at given all your stuff.
Hey Jay, just so I'm clear, you can't share because the Zoom is not letting you, or you can't share because you're not at your computer?
I honestly I can't share because I don't know what the hell. I have like 3
no,
monitors right now, and
no, I just want to make sure I had set the meeting up that you could share. That's why.
Oh no, yeah, Zoom will let me share.
Okay, all right, okay, all right.
Also, wound state having an icon. Maybe we should. I like the icon. Don't get me wrong, but maybe we should go back to not wounded, so it's very, very obvious to the user by the book which wound state is there. I know we have a tooltip in place.
Yeah, the whole thing though, the problem with that whole area is real estate, right? So I mean that's why it says death save instead of death save penalty.
What if we make a not wounded icon instead that always fits that? Like, like a picture that
image.
says, yeah, you see what I'm saying? So we can tell it
Working
this is how
on
big.
those.
And then instead of displaying the smiley face, it displays not wounded, but in image form, something a bit more flashy that displays there that still fits the theme, still fits like the font and everything else everywhere else.
I also suggested the other day, and maybe this isn't a good idea, but I know in some like alternate character sheets for D&D, they have kind of an overlay over the character image. That's a possibility. It could just be like kind of an icon in the corner, and that could free up some real estate in that area. Just
That's
thought.
a good idea. Yeah, very good idea. That we could save that instead of putting wound state down there. We could do death save and death save penalty down there, which is this really like segues into the next thing I want to talk about in terms of our design spec. Right now we show death save and we show a 0. Right? We hover over this, we get a nice little tooltip that says, hey, this is your death save penalty, your critical injuries penalty. I would like to make that whole box more available rather than having the user figure out that they need to do that and click that to do things, etc.
But ideally, it should say death save penalty. There is the ideal situation. So if we can move wound state out of that box somewhere else, then we would have the real estate to do that. I don't think we need death save and death save penalty listed because death save is always going to be your body.
That's true.
Which is right there. So we just kind of need to know the penalty. So if we could do death save penalty as the box header, and then have the critical injury penalty and the death save, like the breakdown of the two in that box, right?
Roger. Yep, I agree. Critical injuries, in our original critical injury spec, we had quite a few buttons and gizmos that don't exist right now, I'm pretty sure. Mainly the ability to click a button to quickly add a critical injury, give it a name, and set a DV was the ideal, and then a button to roll against that critical injury.
So the button to add one is there.
Is it? Okay, so I think that's in dev though. I'm looking at master right now. So.
Oh yeah, so in dev there you can add. There's a button to quickly add a critical injury. When you click it, you can specify the location, the name. You could write up whatever effects, the quick fix treatment and stuff.
Okay.
The one thing that is not in here is oh, well, the DV falls underneath one of those, right? Because your treatment and stuff.
I think quick fix is where the
And-
DV is.
Okay, and
I
then
think.
the death, and then there's a checkbox to say increase base death save, which will, if you check that off, it gets counted as a +1 towards your death save penalty.
Okay, cool.
And with the merge that I submitted for that, I actually put a screenshot in there of how you can actually write a macro that you can click, it will roll against a roll table and then automatically add the critical injury to you.
Now, there's something that we did that I actually quite like, and we kind of did this on accident because the original spec for moving left to right, now we're talking about armor. The original spec for armor was there was going to be you would click body to ablate, and you would have a repair button off to the right. And what we did instead was we listed body, the SP out of whatever, and then a button to ablate the armor. And we don't have a button to repair here. I
Correct.
kind of like that because it, alleviates, and this 8 is not editable. It alleviates any like real easy ability for a player to just click a button and repair something, and then kind of you, as a DM, like there's really no way to remember all of that or to keep track of it.
Right. Because from what I understand in the game, repairing an object is not trivial. Like, you have to spend some downtime
Yeah,
to
it's
do it.
It's a downtime activity. Exactly. I would like to get really deep into downtime stuff like later on. Like when that happens, there's like it'll output stuff to the chat log, all kinds of fancy shit, automatically heal people based on the time allotted, repair things, etc. But I think the armor block here is good how it is. I would like to see an icon added to the left of this and have this body condensed to the right. Just to kind of like clean up this space and make it look more like a how do I say this? More like a card entry, right? Than just a box, right?
Yeah, kind of similar how the weapons in the
spec is going to be. Yes, and that's
in
the
the
next
agenda
one.
that screenshot like that we had originally.
So that's the next thing. That is like I think the biggest thing that I want someone else to champion and like let's get worked on is this weapons card business, getting this in. So the goal here is that the weapon card that displays in the weapons tab really acts as a one-stop shop to configure this weapon, and then you only have one button for attacking. And then based on what check boxes you click and everything else, when you press attack, it will accommodate those different types of attacks, whether it's aimed, suppressifier, auto fire. Suppressifier and auto fire are obviously conditionally shown if the weapon has those traits. Ideally, we would remove this damage button and move that to the attack bubble. So the chain would then be, you press attack here, it rolls the attack. At the bottom of the attack, you have a button that says roll damage. You click that, and then it rolls damage. So that's like the chain, right?
Like the chat card.
Exactly. But we don't, instead of like, we're kind of like coming in half and half, right? So rather than outputting the item to the chat, we're still just making the attack roll, a la like how Warhammer does it. But we're appending that last step for rolling damage to be in the chat log where you're already going to be looking.
Right. I think it could be in both, just because sometimes it's nice to roll damage without having to roll an attack.
That's true. Like, what if your DM says, "I'm not even going to make you roll an attack for this"?
Yeah,
damage.
just like rare use cases. I mean, not that it would be hard to roll, a fake attack or whatever that nobody pays attention to. But
I'm not really adverse to redundant UX like that either. I mean, that's kind of like why Windows is so approachable. So I agree with you.
Yeah, to an extent, not everything should be like multiplied tenfold, but
I don't mind working on the weapons cards like you've got listed out here. I guess I would like to be clear to some of the community users that this is like the focus rather than putting more like there's requests to like have other things in the chat cards, like opposing roles, like evasion kind of things.
That's coming. Yeah. I want to get this done first though, right?
Like, I understand that. And so I guess what I'm saying is like, I'd like to be clear in like Trello and some of the other issues. So it's like, hey, we heard these, we're not taking them out of the backlog. We're just not working on them right now. We're just going to focus on this card stuff first.
Absolutely.
Cool.
And then like that would be the next, I think that would be the logical next step after this is solidified, is going into the output there and advancing that up, because I do want, like, opposed checks are huge in this game. Warhammer has opposed checks like right there in the box. We should be able to do that too. And I would really like it as a GM, right? If I could click that opposed check and whatever token I have clicked, like, is the active token, and it will make that opposed check, like, bring up a drop down, let me pick my skill, and then, you know, go from there. Like, that's why I want to do it afterwards, because there's a lot to be talked about in terms of how we're going to implement that, like what that process is going to look like. Like, there's so many ways to skin that cat. It's ridiculous. Anyway, sorry.
Cool.
Now you got me thinking about it, Zizix.
I think for this meeting, it's good enough to just say that's the direction. And I can start putting like some cards together to kind of track that work, start moving things in that direction. And we can have more conversations there.
Yeah. All right. And then, all right, so back to net running. Net running is going to be pretty big, and I've already kind of like started like theory crafting this in my head as to what we're going to build. Essentially, cyber decks are going to be items that you equip, right? You can have a singular active cyber deck. If you try to have more than one active cyber deck, it'll like yell at you. That ideally, that's the way it's going to play out. I think we should fall back to like notifying them that they have more than one active cyber deck, rather than restricting that just because homebrew and all the other stuff.
Is it sufficient? Like right now we have like the little equip icon. So we have equip on person or equip owned and whatever the other one is, carried. Mm-hmm. So is it good enough to just have like only one can be equipped and you get the warnings if you have more than that?
Mm-hmm. That's what I was thinking about doing, because I thought that'd be the quickest way to get there.
So the only problem with that is it may be easier code wise to have them only equip one, because if you have programs and stuff that you run and they get derezzed or something, or if they get attacked by a program Black Ice, you'll need to know which cyber deck to wipe that program from.
Yep.
So if you have two equipped, you might it'll make coding that difficult to determine which cyber deck to wipe that program from.
Absolutely.
Suggesting maybe like a hard block on one for now.
Yes.
And then you know, as we add more code, we might loosen it up later.
Correct. Yeah. I think that limiting them to one equipped at a time is probably the best way to go to avoid situations like that.
Do you think it'll matter? Because the way this is going to work out is we're going to load programs into this like the same way we do for ammunition.
I'm talking about a program Black Ice that when it attacks you, it can wipe a program off of your cyber deck.
Yeah.
If it attacks you and we want it to automatically randomly delete something off the deck, you're not going to know.
Isn't that like, that's more automation stuff for the future though? So should we worry about that now to accommodate that now, or should we like come about that problem later is what I'm asking.
I mean, the GM can physically delete something off of the...
I say nix it now, because then if you allow them to do two at the same time and then later you change it, you're taking stuff away from them, and people don't like things taken away.
Okay.
Oh, also
fair.
Here's another thing. Like, derezzing doesn't mean they're destroyed.
In most cases.
No, but there's a
ASP, I think it is.
They can delete a program off your deck.
Yeah.
Is it ASP?
Right? So that's not derezzing, that's deleting it. That's like wiping it right off your deck.
Yep.
Yeah, ASP destroys a single program install. It's my favorite one.
I just used that the other night.
The killer does that too. Killer destroys.
Killer.
Like if it destroys, if it were to derez a program, then it destroys it instead.
All right, so then programs will be another item type we're going to implement now. Programs as the item
type. Before we go
type.
too far, Jack, for cyber, what I'd like to get to is like for each one of these, like, do you think it makes sense to have like one of us like volunteer to drive a particular card, and then that way we're not like stepping on each other? Or I guess we're trying to get to ownership of each of these things. Let's
do the design first and then pick up ownership, because otherwise, like, there's we no matter what, if we do have multiple people working on all these cards, I think it would be helpful to have like an overview of the big picture, regardless, right? So
okay, yep, let's go with programs then. Sorry to interrupt.
All right, so in programs, what this is going to encompass, the idea I had was programs in the item type, right, would be attackers, defenders, boosters, and Black Ice, right?
Yeah.
All right, so how this works, and it gets hairy because of the black ice stuff, but how this works is that these are basically going to function the same way we do ammo, where the cyber deck in your inventory, right, has a load button. It brings up a dialog and lets you select a list of programs from your inventory that are not loaded into a cyber deck. If you load them into the cyber deck, it removes them from display in the inventory and then sorts them into display underneath that cyber deck appended the same way we do for cyberware, but in your inventory rather than in the cyberware tab. All right. Black ice is where this gets weird. It's going to follow the same functionality, but it needs an extra very cool thing that it does. All right. Black ice needs the ability to create an actor of itself. All right. So black ice will also be an actor type because black ice is the super type for demons as per the book. Demons are a type of black ice that just can't be put into cyberdecks basically.
Yeah.
So having that button on the item card, right? So when you go to use black ice from your cyber deck, it will then create a actor for that black ice under the control of the person who created it, right? The player. And then that player or the GM could then add that black ice to the scene. And now this really only needs to be done once, honestly. And then it's just there. They have control over it and the GM can drag it around what black ice they need for sorting purposes. But the ability for the player to on their own create that actor, I think, is the important bit. And if they create 20 of them, so be it. You could just clean it up yourselves. It's just, that's the only way I can think to accommodate a one-to-one relationship between the item that gets slotted into the cyber deck and the actor, right, that represents the black ice in the initiative order.
So,
Did you get a chance to look at this, like look at combatants when Mooman was suggesting that before?
I feel like the documentation on that is far too loose, that extending combatant under the hood just to add an item manually to the combat tracker would be, I mean, if we can make that work, that's super fancy and we'll be like pushing the boundaries of the system. However, having a actor type for black ice and a item type for programs and a subtype of program is black ice and a subtype of black ice is demon allows for like you to really create every use case.
So,
and with
Gotcha.
you know what I mean, including slotting the black ice into the cyber deck, that taking up 2 slots instead of 1, you know, and then summoning the black ice from your cyber deck when you're net running, because that's essentially how it works, right?
So there's another reason why we don't want to do the combatants is because the combatant just is an entity in the list. We need it's not associated to a specific token. So
Right.
and you need the ability to be able to move the black ice within the net architecture. So it functions exactly like it functions more like an actor. So entirely rather than just making it a combatant.
So it sounds like having a token is useful to model where they are in the net architecture. I understand.
Yeah.
Yep.
So hey Jay, when back on programs and black ice, when someone's loading them into the deck and we pop up that dialogue and they check off tick, 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 and they checked off more items than they can load into their deck. Do we want to just reject all of them or reject up to install what they checked up until a certain point? Or how do you want to handle that?
I want to do it one by one. So when they're loading it, I'd like it to be a drop-down menu and not a multi-checkbox menu.
Got it. Okay.
So they load, they select from the drop-down, they hit load, and their slots get updated. They load, it gets updated. On load, that way it'll know if it's more than, it could just be like error, this cyber deck doesn't have any more slots. That's what I was thinking.
What about if we did this? What if we had 2 columns and we had 1 column loaded and 1 column unloaded? Everything starts unloaded, and they're 2 radio buttons. And as they tick off a radio button, it updates the available space at the top or something like that, so that they can see the programs and it shows the number of option slots they take.
So they could do, you're trying to combine all, so they're less clicks, right? To do it all.
Yeah, exactly.
If we can make that work, that would not be bad, right? So it'll like, basically we'll get a dialogue. It'll be like, this is the cyber deck you're doing, this is how many slots. And then it'll list all of the programs in your inventory, right? It'll
how
have
much slot each takes.
Load check, and at the bottom it'll calculate it. And if you try to do more than it could take, it won't take it. Basically, it has to
Yep.
be under or at. Okay,
Yeah.
I think that would be a good way to make use of that in one dialogue.
Yeah, because I just see loading the deck up, like load, click, load. I feel like back in the Commodore 64, swapping discs in.
I was just trying to make it thematic for you guys, honestly. Give some nostalgia for you and Rich.
Thanks, ass.
Okay, so I agree. I think if we can condense that down into one like that and then correctly accommodate that, that alleviates that issue altogether.
Darren, I was having a hard time following. Can you put that in like the
yeah.
program section?
Yep.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'm about to it now.
So demons are the last one. Demons are a subtype of black ice. According to the rules, a black ice with extra icing basically is a demon, right? So as a GM is the only person that needs to worry about this. As far as I'm aware, I don't think in the case of player-made net architectures, you put demons into them. Flint, you can correct me if I'm wrong there.
You can have a demon in a. You can do that.
Now, but you cannot slot a demon into a cyber deck. Is that correct?
That I believe is true as well. I think they have to be in a net architecture, but there's nothing that there's no reason a player can't have one as long as they got the eddies and go and buy it, you know.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So then like I said, with them being just actors, like the stuff that really what makes a demon special is it's the exact same thing as stats on a black ice. It has the ability to activate control nodes. Am I right? Is there anything else that makes them?
The only thing it can do is control. It has a certain amount of actions per its
That's
turn.
the other thing. Multiple actions.
And it has multiple actions, but it can
zap.
only activate one node one node at a time during that time. So if a net architecture has 2 nodes, it can only activate one node once and then the other node once. And then it also has the ability to use zap.
Right.
Which is a Netrunner action. It's the only other action it can use. So a node can only be activated once a turn, but it can activate multiple nodes in its turn. Just not the same one twice.
Yeah, which I think that same rule applies to Netrunners.
Yes, same to Netrunners.
Which gives Netrunners the best ROF.
Also, Darren, I sent you everything.
Cool.
Yeah, they're demons. How I think of them are basically like dumber enemy Netrunners.
Okay, that's exactly what I thought they were supposed to be used for. It's weird because they're a type of black ice, but black ice you could slot. It makes it really hard to model in terms of code because honestly, like the whole concept doesn't make any fucking sense, you know, at all. If anything, demon should have been a completely separate entity, and then black ice should have just been deadly programs that could act net runners, and then programs could only interact with the net and software, and then all of this would have suddenly made sense. But that's you know, we're not RTG. We can't fix that problem. The last one is net architectures. I would like a method as a GM to embody network architectures or net architectures in an item card. And I would like this item card to have the functionality of clicking a button to add a level, giving that level a DV entry and a text field entry that describes what's there. And then beneath that have 2 buttons, one to add another level or one to add a split, so that I could quickly model a net architecture to reference during play. I would also like this because then I could give this net architecture item to a player, give them ownership, and it lets the players own net architectures as outlined in the rules, right? That's why I disagree with the idea, not really disagree, I think it's fancy and cool, but with the idea of making like maps, like to encompass net architectures with like the tokens and the layout and stuff, because these are items players can own, and they're items that could necessarily be like everywhere, if you think about it. So the ability to make a shit ton of these rapidly, I think would help a lot in terms of like, you know, just on the fly GMing. Like, oh, I need an net architecture for this soda machine.
I think it's up to the GM to make it fancy. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think it necessarily needs to be included to like build it within the scene editor as part of the system. Like
Exactly. So
Foundry
that
already supports building it if you're willing to get fancy.
So
this would
nice.
be the reference tool for them to do some GM prep or to read off of, and then they could do the fancy stuff to the side. But I
Right.
don't think we should. I think we should be careful if people start asking for that. Then we should be like, hey, we're not going to do like scene generation.
Right. Well, it's already I mean, I've already made some really cool little net architectures, and I know Nick, who's here, I think made a really cool one, like kind of off to the side on the same map. So I mean, like you can really already do that just with Foundry's tools, you know.
Exactly.
So
This is more for like I don't even know what to call this. This is more for GM prep, not or what would you say?
So this is like something you could do while you're playing if you needed to come up with a net architecture for X.
On the fly.
This
Yeah.
isn't something that where you're gonna have the net runner in something because spawn there'll
Yeah.
be the black
Or
ice.
like,
Okay.
or let's
Alright.
say your tech, your med tech, right?
So this is a GM
decides
tool.
to buy a net architecture
Mhm.
for their house, right? How do you model that right now? Right now, you would have to make a scene or like write it down, or they put it in their notes what the net architecture is. With this, you could quickly model it out and then just share it with them. All right, this is your net architecture that's in your house.
And then
like-
but you'd have to create a scene if you're ever actually gonna use it.
Not necessarily. I mean, you could just be like theater of mind. What level are you?
Right,
at?
okay, theater of
Roll
mind.
this.
Okay,
Yeah,
well,
right?
Depends.
I was gonna say if we're gonna just always make net architecture theater of mind, then we don't need any kind of black ice actors.
No, that's
Right.
actually, scene is irrelevant.
I have a
The
question.
token stuff is irrelevant with the actors on the black ice and stuff. It's about getting them into the initiative queue. The only way to get them to the initiative queue is with making them an actor. That's why.
Okay,
That's
so-
the only
Yeah.
reason.
So if we don't care about allowing GMs, which every GM that I've seen that ran net running created a scene for it and created doors and stuff to show the thing going down.
Yep.
If rather than doing theater of mind, it just seems like that seems to be the preferred method to go to rather than theater of mind. So
My
I think
players are definitely enjoying that.
so I think with adding the token is probably more of a necessity than we'd like to
That's
state.
true.
So whereas I understand the purpose of this net architecture item to be something quick to throw together. But I think when it comes time to role play, if the tech made his own net architecture and then you were going to have someone break into a system, I think it behooves the GM to actually build that scenery, right?
Definitely.
Yeah,
but
that's separate. But having the model for the player to look at, I think would be nice. This brings up another point later on down the road. This whole thing, you can make custom applications. So a character sheet is an application. Like the chat is an application. Your combat tracker is an application. What if we could make a custom application that embodied a net architecture that tokens went into? It was like a scene that would then model this, right? So that you would make it as this item, and then you would be able to run that network or that net architecture
Or generate it.
and then jack into it. Like basically a character would be able to jack into that. It would bring up that application, right?
Mhm.
And then they would be like going room to room, floor to floor, and it would show very
Okay.
similar to.
So
that'd
Let
be
me
pretty
I have a
badass.
picture. I have a picture that inspired this whole idea. One
Alright.
second.
but
It'd be
very
pretty
very
badass,
quickly,
but I
if
think
we
it
do
is.
do that.
Oh, yep.
Every actor that goes into that tracker needs to be invisible to the net runner if they don't own that architecture.
Yes, exactly. And that's
So
why
they
I
need
would
to
like
they
to
need to start
every floor
need to
like would
start
have a reveal button on the GM side of the thing, and then basically you would see the floor you're on, and then the GM could click the reveal button if they so choose to reveal what's there. Like in the case of what's that? Trace, I think it is.
Pathfinder.
Pathfinder, yes. Right, in the case of
Pathfinder lets
Pathfinder.
you essentially reveals everything up to a passworded door.
So this is what inspired this. Like the application would essentially look similar to this, and you would then to the left of that just move, top to bottom with the tokens, and it wouldn't be like you would drag them. It would be more like you would click a button. You would click this DV11 button as the player. You would click that, and it would make the relative roll for you, or bring up a dialogue asking which skill you would like to use.
Yep.
That's how I see that working. And then if you succeeded, the GM could advance you, right? And then it would move your token down a floor. And this way you could have even multiple people in there doing shit, and the GM could advance this person, advance that person. Now this is a custom application. Like this is heavy lifting. This is not.
Yeah, I feel like that should be down the line.
All right. This is. I just wanted to get this out there so you understood. I think this could be a core thing. I think not enough people are taking advantage of like just how powerful Foundry is, and the idea that everything quote unquote needs to be a module that the D&D system is setting, I think is flawed. Like some of these things should just be part of the system. You know what I mean?
Baked into the system. Okay. So then, okay.
But I just wanted, the only reason I wanted to say any of this though is to make everyone aware that what I'm doing with the net architecture and stuff, all of this, there's like the very long-term path there that I'm kind of like teasing, but I'm not sold that it's viable yet. And I just want to let everyone to be aware that.
Yeah. I have some questions about it to kind of like get a better idea of this. So like, if it's its own scene, if when you create this net architecture, it creates like its own scene essentially. And with its own tracking. Because I know that usually the way that it works on a combat tracker is that it doesn't track anything that is not on a scene. So if the actor is not on the scene, then it cannot be put in combat.
It wouldn't be its own scene though. He's saying it would be its own like application, like a full other window.
Yeah, exactly. Like a new chat window,
like
or a new
that would come up.
Yeah, no, not even like a pop-up, like a new version of like what happens when you open a character sheet, like a new application. Like
okay.
Like a complete extension of the core of how Foundry functions when playing Cyberpunk.
Like kind of like Tokenizer opens up a separate window. It would be like a separate window that has this in it, right? That you can drag tokens into it.
Gotcha.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, and then that's it for network stuff. There's a lot going on here, so this is going to be a shit ton of work. I'm going to do my absolute best to dive back in and like champion a lot of this to help out. Darren, if you could help with the cyber decks, because you handled basically most of the reloading logic, like that would help me a lot, because that is exactly what we're going to do with this. Is programs are ammunition, cyber decks are weapons. We want to load them. I will do like the majority of the work in like the data modeling side, and then it's just implementation, getting all these little nuts and bolts working on each one of these item types. It should be shouldn't be too bad. The big thing is going to be this button that creates an actor from an item. That's going to be where we have a lot of fun, and there's going to be a lot of data hiding, right? So like that only occurs if it's a black ice, right? And then there's going to be, after this is all done, the next step, and I don't think we're going to do this in phase 2, but the next step is to create another tab in the fight tab that you can swap between that would have net actions versus meat actions, right? So then you could then use this cyber deck. All right.
Well, I mean, that's where your roll tab it goes.
No, I think the roll tab needs to not have this, for the sole purpose that like it's outlining a shit ton of actions you take like during action time, right? So I'd like this to live on the fight tab in a flip side. So like you click a button on the fight tab and it cycles between meat and net if you have an active cyber deck. So if you have an active cyber deck, you see that button, you click it, now you're looking at all your net actions. It shows your cyber deck, all your programs are slotted, like what rolls you can make, all that shit. The reason being is because the roll tab could have multiple roles in it, right? Because we've done, and like I feel like that would just clutter up that screen even more than it already is, because it's already kind of a mess. So
yep. I mean, it might even make sense to have, this Netrunner's interface role on that cyber deck tab.
Exactly.
As well, just so that you don't have to keep switching back and forth.
There is
make the one role you ever make as a Netrunner.
There's a finite list of actions a Netrunner can take, and I feel like it would be really helpful to have all those there, and just then now Netrunning went like, all right, the Netrunner jacks in, they switch to their net actions, and when it's their turn, they're clicking those, and it's very easy for the GM to be like, oh, he made this roll, he made that roll, he made that roll, he's out of actions, And now net running is behaving the way it should.
Yeah, it'd be nice if what we did was on the fight tab, if the character had a net runner greater than 0, we basically put a toggle there so they can toggle between that fight, and they can still switch back and forth for the fight for the meat section, but then they could also have they toggle it over to the net, and then you have the entire area down bottom.
Yep. And I think it should not be relevant of net running or net runner. It should be relevant of if they have an equipped cyber deck. And I know that breaks the rules, but this helps Mooks, honestly, more so than anything. And it helps homebrew. It helps anyone that says like you just need a cyber deck to jack in. Like just make it dependent on the cyber deck. And the reason being is because the cyber deck will also dictate what shows here, just like weapons and armor, right? So weapons and armor that are equipped show up in the fight tab, and then the cyber deck dictates what programs are shown in the net version of the fight tab, basically, is what I'm seeing. The weird thing is with that is if you don't have any roles in interface, what happens to those roles? And I think we just treat it as if you have a 0, right? Like just like you do with a skill roll was my thought.
Yeah.
Now if there's hardcore consensus that you have to be a net runner to even use a cyber deck, like peer in the world, like only net runners can use cyber decks, everyone else is too stupid, then like we can just make it based on the net runner stuff. But like,
yeah, I know that there probably is going to be users and GMs that are going to be like, hey, this should only be for net runners, but
I mean,
what do we think is going to happen with future supplements and net running? Anything? Do we think it'll change at all?
So the thing about net running is that what I've noticed is that they try to make each thing to be specifically for that person. Even like as a med tech, no, like in the med tech thing says no one can use a cryo thing unless you're a med tech. Nobody can do surgery unless you're a med tech. No one can use the drugs of a med tech unless you're a med tech. Like they're trying to be very like, hey, these roles have a specific thing, and they do
your thing.
You make them special. And it's the same thing with net running, and it's the same thing with solos. Solos only have this.
But if can a net runner jack in without a cyber deck?
Dip into net runner.
No,
jack in.
Not without a cyber deck. Without virtuality goggles, they can.
Yeah. So so a net runner can jack in, even without virtuality goggles, but they can't see around them. They're not aware of their surrounding if they do not have virtuality goggles.
They're classified as unconscious.
And they can't take immediate actions.
But like you guys are saying, the consent only net runners should be able to have net actions. So it should be based on the interface. If you have the role net runner, you get the toggle to see the net actions.
Right.
I like that. And this could go into the other guys too. If you have the role exec, right, then you'll get a toggle that will show you a list of all your little cronies. Maybe. And like you could just roll. Well,
that's the thing. That's would essentially you're essentially eliminating the role tab in a way.
Yeah, but the problem is so the issue with that is as soon as you get to multi-classing. So now if you have an exec who's also a net runner, what are they seeing when they toggle over?
Like they'll just get all 3 of those buttons, right? So they're like sub tabs on the fight tab or tabs that get added to the whole thing.
Right. So then this goes
back to tab is just data entry for the role levels and stuff like that.
Yeah, but I think I'm kind of thinking that maybe this stuff does belong on the role tab.
Yeah, because that's why it's at the bottom. That's why it's right there at the bottom with the fight. It's essentially a toggle if you click from one place to the other.
So how do we want to display the role tab? We could display the role tab as you click the role tab. Maybe we should rethink organizing the role tab and it'll give us better.
That's already on the to-do list to reorganize the role tab, right? Because you mentioned that earlier.
Yep,
we haven't really touched it. It's just been a list to kind of display what people have and what is shown on the sheet of what their main role is. But other than that, we haven't touched it for anything.
Okay. So then the last really big item is Mooks. So I would right now Mooks are just clones of characters in terms of look and how you organize data on them, and I like that because it makes setting up both things the same. But I would very much like to also have a button on Mooks that condenses them.
That
So-
condenses everything. Yeah.
I was playing around with that, and so rather than that, what if you just what if they were able to just click the sheet token and change to a card sheet?
Yep. I was just
So
gonna
they
suggest
so
that.
they can configure the entire sheet, like they can configure the character using this clone of the character sheet,
Yeah.
but then they can select the card sheet, which basically makes that other version that's condensed and lists everything out. Because like if you look at the one in the book, it lists all of the skills. So
Yeah,
I mean, editing
So-
that would be a super pain in the ass. And then
No.
what they can do is they can favorite whatever skills they wanted to, and then when they switch to the card, that's
It'll
the only
only
stuff that that shows.
Exactly.
I have
yes.
something that I wanted to add to that when it comes to skills. So after looking through all the skills of all the mooks,
Now what?
because I
Hold
had
on.
to enter every single mook, they really only have the base skills that everybody has a 2 on, the ones that everybody starts with,
Mm-hmm.
and then maybe 1 or 2 that are extra.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
why not just have the mook sheets always only in the skills instead of having the entire list? Just have the base ones, and then GMs can just add the ones they need in.
No, we
No.
don't want to do that.
Yeah, because we
No?
don't want that. We're honestly, we would like to like hide the compendiums entirely and pragmatically add these skills.
Okay, so then what if they
but
just start?
What I
ready
think,
just
what
for
yeah,
lack?
they start favorited. That would be like a better way to do that.
Yeah, they
those skills
start
always start
favorited
favorited.
and collapsed.
Yep. But let's go back to the button thing. All right, so we're talking about 2 different views for the same sheet, right? You have the card view, which is like the condensed view that we see in the book, and we have the character view. Which
I'm
is
gonna
what
go
we
now
have.
though because I
Mhm.
got a couple things to do though.
All right, no worries. Later. Thank you for stopping in. Man.
Thank you.
No worries.
Nice to
See ya.
meet you.
So I would like a button at the top of the sheet, right, that you click that toggles between these 2 stylings rather than like changing the sheet type itself. For the main reason, honestly, that there's some weirdness that happens when you select a different sheet type, because if you select the default, it changes it for everything. You want it that this setting to be per sheet.
Yeah, you can easily like fuck it up. I've definitely messed up the sheet thing before, and it was annoying.
So other sheets will overlay the data?
No, like what happens is like we have all of our styling in place for the character version of the sheet, right?
Yeah.
And then we have a button that appears on the top of the sheet.
No, I'm trying to understand what the problem is with switching to a card.
No, there is no problem. What I'm saying is you crossed out button to condense the information and allow players to swap between sheets, card versus character, right? Rather than swap between sheets, right? The actual sheets, I want to just toggle the display style on the same sheet, right?
I get what you're saying, but I think we should at least explore what Darren's suggesting, because that is a piece of Foundry functionality there.
And
being able to swap sheets with the same data.
Right. And the other advantage of that is you specify default sizing within the sheet. So even though you switch the format to the other one, when you close that sheet, it's going to reopen at whatever size the other stuff was, right?
Maybe we'll have to test it. I don't know if
Yeah,
it'll behave that well. That's why I don't want to do this, because I have definitely fucked up my D&D sheets by accidentally switching between like
But that's what I'm trying to understand. That's the part I'm not following. So switching the sheets is actually changing your data?
No, it's changing the config of the sheet, right? So that thing you define when you define a sheet at the top there that gives it all the default like stylings and shit. That shit changes. So like let's say in the D&D house, right? There's like 4 NPC sheets, and one of them is called like monster card, which is like a stat block from the book, right? What I've done before is like not intentionally made every sheet in my table, like all 100 of them that I had made, that sheet, when I really only meant to make like just the guy I was using in that sheet so that I could save screen space, right? And then what happened was I accidentally like uninstalled the sheet that I was using to set everything up, right? Which kind of had better means of adding data to a sheet, and then forgot what it was, and then didn't realize it, and then I had to go back through and like just fix the formatting on everything.
So you don't want to use other sheets because you had a user error.
No, I'm just saying we alleviate all of the shenanigans of swapping sheets and fucking up changing the default sheet by having this logic exist as just a button on the sheet that compacts it or expands it. The data is the same under the hood. You are right about that. But that compact button, which basically just toggles one HBS from another, right, as to which one's getting displayed, like that.
I don't know. I just feel it would be a lot cleaner from you leveraging the functionality within Foundry as a
What you're
separate
talking
sheet.
about is designing a entirely separate sheet, and these two sheets know nothing about each other, and it's up to
Yes.
the user to then change it, and then they have to know to go to sheets and change it and know that there's a condensed version. That's essentially a module. What I'm advocating for is like core functionality on Mook sheets. It's very apparent when you click this button, it condenses it. Like that's more an obvious UX there, right? I understand what you're saying, but like,
Yeah, I do agree with
Uh,
that it's way more clear to just have one button that suddenly everything is editable and changeable, and then you press it and then it's condensed again.
Is changing sheets an API thing? Like, could the button just change the sheets?
Okay,
no,
so
well, maybe actually. That's, I mean, I don't want to say no. It might be a possibility. I just think it'd be cumbersome.
so part of the part of the issue with this is there's certain aspects that are tied to that sheet. Like
Mhm.
the
All
tab
right.
section,
Oh,
like
wait,
the
hold on.
tab
Yeah,
sec
here. Yeah,
like the
that's
tab
exactly right.
sections and all that stuff. So now if you're using the same sheet, which is the same framework, but you're just changing the style of it, you still have those tab sections all set up. So how are you going to handle?
Hold on. Yeah, that's
I mean,
why I want to
it's
do it this way. All right. So in the sheet as it is with the tabs and the cyberware and all the functionality, we have all of the means to create a character and equip them with cyberware and equip them with weapons and organize them, right? If you do it your way, you have to re-implement all of that for your condensed version of the sheet.
right, but the other version of the sheet doesn't have any of that.
But if it's a separate version of a sheet entirely, people will think it should because it's a completely separate sheet, not an altered view of the same sheet.
Right, but I'm looking at what you have in Trello, and what you have in Trello is directly from the book, and it doesn't have anything close to that.
Yes, I know. That's what I'm saying. Like the condensed version will just have like,
Then it should be its own sheet. You're saying that we shouldn't have a separate sheet because we're gonna have to redo all that code, but that code isn't needed for the other sheet. So that's why
that's what, yeah, that's all right. So we don't want the condensed view to be editable at all. It's just display. It just reorganizes the information that you've already edited and displays it with some buttons you can click, right?
Yes.
All right. Now, if you make it another sheet, like where you go up to the menu and you click that select sheet button and drop it down, you
Yes.
have to make it editable.
No, you
Because
don't.
it is a completely other sheet. Yes, think about how like crazy that would be as a user. I'm gonna make 30 guys, right? And then to edit them, I have to change which sheet is selected, and then I reload it and then do all that stuff.
So to change it, you're gonna just have to click the button. What's the difference?
But the difference is like that it's a part of it versus like two different classes, two different everythings.
This sounds like to me like between the three of us, we don't have a complete understanding of how this is all going to look. So I still feel like I think we can agree on what the condensed version should look like minimally.
Yeah.
And once we have that, we can do a better analysis on how this is going to be different from the other, from having like, we can do a better like analysis of like, is it better to have two sheets or is it better to have a button that flips between expressions on the same sheet?
I promise you,
agree to that?
Darren, 100%. If you just implement the HBS of what the condensed version looks like with the buttons you want to be able to click for weapons and things, and add a button to the top left of Book Sheets that just toggles between the editable HBS, which is like the one it is now, the character version, and the card HBS, you will have a much easier time implementing this. But if you would like to set up a completely separate sheet and toggle it that way, like, and that's really how you think it would be like easier, then
No,
like for that.
I struggled through the whole thing to redo this whole redesign, and I think the way you want to do it is going to be more difficult. I would like you to do it and show me how to do it, because to me, I don't think it's going to come out like you think.
It will, because it's going to be a button that says if button is set to true, display this way, else set display that way.
But you're displaying from what point? You have it your entire sheet is a grid.
Yes.
So what part of the grid are you sticking your stuff in? because
stuff?
it's
You're going to have a total new grid, total new CSS classes. It'll be when you click that button at the top level of that character sheet of the CSS for it, right? On Mooks, right? It is going to load completely different markup and classes to render that data.
okay. So everything in the actor sheet is under actor dash sheet.
Mm-hmm.
That is a class that Foundry puts in there.
This would be below that, one step below that.
Okay, the grid is in actor dash sheet.
What the fuck?
Because that's the way it's designed. That's why I'm saying it's not going to be as easy as you think.
To even make another sheet period then?
No, to make another sheet is fine. You can that's easy. But I think that if you try to go down this road and please have at it. If you can do it, I'd love to see how to do it, because I think that it's not going to do what you want it to do. And you and I both struggled with CSS before, and you know what the undertaking was in order to get the thing to look the way it does today. So I'm just saying that I think that we'd have an easier time implementing a completely different sheet.
Let me look at, and this is this actor
So
sheet.
look in less actor dash sheet.
Actor dot sheet dot less. So this is the thing that encompasses all of the actor shit, right?
That's the entire actor sheet, yeah.
Maybe this was a bad thing to do then, because we want this to be the same here, but we want a Mook version of this with different markup that we want to toggle between. Maybe it will still work, but we have another actor sheet Mook, or actor sheet Mook and actor sheet Mook condensed. Either way, we're going to have to do that then, because we'd want to reuse most of this logic, like for setting and the cyberware and all that shit. Because all that logic exists in,
But again, I think we need to defer to what Z said and go back to figure out what the card's going to look like first, because looking at the picture that's in it that we have in the Trello card, I don't think any of this logic really applies. As far as layout logic, that is.
No, I'm talking about like all the hooks and buttons and shit like that. Like we can reuse those classes for the buttons and all of that stuff if it's the same underbelly, right? And we just get to it with different styling. It was my goal, but I see what you're saying now. I'm looking through this. I'm really just digging into the grid to see how we would toggle between the two.
Can we finish that conversation?
Yeah, because I have to wrap up too. So what's next on the list, guys? That
design elements.
We kind of touched on that before. I think you got here.
Why don't you jump back to the get data?
Sure. Yeah, get data. What makes get data expensive for us? Because it really shouldn't be that impactful. Is there something that's happening that?
So I could be wrong about this, but I was under the impression that get data was pulling data from, like, refreshing it from the server.
No, that's what get data is really just a shortcut to get the data object from like any entity. So we don't have to drill down and do data.data. It doesn't call for the server. It doesn't do anything like that. It doesn't do anything that's really going to hurt us in terms of like computation. Like we could do it a million times. It's not going to make a difference.
So I guess programmatically, like how does a client get entity data? Like how does it stay current? You know what I mean?
That's all under the hood Foundry shit in terms of like what the fuck's happening in terms of client to server and things talking back and forth.
All right.
Like that's something, the way that Foundry's built, we should never worry about that. So long as we're making the right function calls and entity updates, our shit will propagate backwards, and all of these other functions like just do what they're supposed to do in terms of who gets to see what and all that.
Okay. I mean, the only reason I was thinking it was expensive was I thought it was contacting the server, and I also know that whenever it's called, like there's just a shit ton of text that goes by in the devlog, which is maybe by design, but it just looks like an expensive call. And when you have like 3 of them stacked up as you're going through like a flow, it just felt like They just felt like, I don't know, just felt inefficient to me.
Well, that might be an inefficiency, but the call to get data can't really, like Darren made a good point earlier. What's more efficient? Wrapping the model and using get data to get to what we want, or calling like entity dot data dot whatever the hell we want, right? Like,
Yeah, I don't know.
that's something
Yeah.
to look at.
I think at a minimum, for this objects, I don't think we should use get data to call like this dot get data. I think we should access this data to data, because that's just as far as what it should be doing, it should be just accessing a piece of memory, right? Whereas this dot running this dot get data is actually jumping to code execution that's getting it part of memory that's returning it, right? So for items that we need to use the data on the item, I don't think we should use this dot get data. We should use this dot data.
Now, are we sure? Because I did the get data one to make it a lot easier for other people to understand like what's happening in terms of Foundry, so they didn't get confused by the this dot data, and they weren't setting things everywhere. That was the goal, was to move away from that, and to abstract like the getting an entity and its Foundry level data as well as its model data.
Do I didn't look. Do the other systems all use this dot data?
Sporadically, sometimes they call this something like this, sometimes they have like get, whatever subpart of data. There's not really a standard on it. Honestly, I was thinking about it the other day. It'd be really helpful to have a get Foundry data and a get like model data, right? That would get the model data would be that one, and that gets everything that appears in our template, or template data would really be the word, and Foundry data gets that plus everything one level up, as you would expect, like name and all the other shit.
The one downside of this dot get data is that it returns the data object, but you can't set this dot get data dot something to a value.
Oh yeah, exactly. It's only supposed to be a helper function to get things to compute, and then what you have to do with that at the end of it is call update entity, if you would want to propagate that back up to the server, and that pattern is the same regardless. That's the server talk that Z was really getting at, that matters.
Yeah, I wonder if there's a wait, does if there's a way to put a timing thing around a command in JavaScript to see to show the execution times? Like in Linux, you could do time space a command and it'll tell you.
There must be.
So
yeah,
we should probably just do a quick test on that. I mean, it should be easy enough to check, right?
Yep. I don't know if, I'm assuming you guys see this too, like when you have the devlog open for a while.
I gotta go. I gotta go help my buddy unload a truck real quick outside. I'm sorry. I'll be back.
Okay. Darren, I'm sure you've probably seen this when you have like the devlog open for a while, but there'll just be like these random violations and warnings that get emitted from time to time.
Yeah, I've noticed that. The other thing I noticed is that on startup, and I cannot put a breakpoint in to get into the code to figure out what the hell it is. On startup, we're throwing an error, and I don't know. Let me see if I can.
So not on reload, but on startup.
Like when you go into a game. Let me see if I can pull this up here.
I know I've seen uncaught exceptions when we cancel dialog boxes too.
Yeah. Now this is, let me log out and then go to setup and come back in. It's like when the game starts up. There it is. This guy here. All right, you see my screen?
Yep.
That, I don't know what that is.
Oh yeah, that's fun.
It's something coming out of the calculate derived stats, and I put a breakpoint on it, but it doesn't break.
Yeah,
because the code doesn't get it's getting caused when the code is loading, so the code doesn't load and to get the
not executing
fast enough, right? Yeah.
Yep.
So
yeah,
I'm not really sure how to debug or troubleshoot this one.
Okay. Yeah, we don't have to dwell on it. too much. There's just some other things I was noticing. I guess we're just wrapping up. I had like a couple of cards left that I wanted to go through, but we don't have to stick around for that. We got through the bulk of the good stuff, I think.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, so I tried to take some notes before you got here. That's the bold italicized stuff that is in the top sections.
Yep. Thank you.
And this whole thing was recorded, so I'll actually I guess I could stop recording now, and then I'll post a link to it. I'll pull it down and also post a link to it.
Okay. Yeah, once the link's there, I can put together like a wiki page. It's like just records of these meetings and where the minutes are.
Okay. Jalen, Nick, do you guys have anything else or?
I don't think so. One thing that about the Mook sheets is I was like just separate from what the main discussion was regarding. I know that in the book, the Mook sheets actually don't auto calculate the stats.
Right.
As following the same rules as like, player characters. So I was thinking, I know that right now there's a system setting for auto calculating derived stats, which I think applies to everything. So
It
it might
does,
be
yeah.
it might be nice to have a system setting that disables it just for Mook type sheets. And honestly, I think that could be like an in the meantime would be really helpful for people, because I know that just a few GMs that I've talked to have been like, oh, I don't know how to make the Mook sheets like conform to what's in the book. They weren't really complaining about the format so much as just that they couldn't get it to.
Honestly, I think the book has is actually a typo.
You really think so?
Nice.
I do because like it's like one specific stat I think is different in the books. The other stuff seems to line up from what I saw.
Yeah, we could try
Yeah.
asking in the Talsorian Discord.
Yeah, I
Yeah, I think-
asked and they told me to go look at the go look and see if it was in the
Errata.
yeah, the errata, and I went back and said no, it's not an errata, and they never responded. So
Yeah, I think it's usually the hit points that seem to fall out of place.
Yeah.
Like the booster's got 20 hit
Right.
points in the book, but by its body and will, it should have 25, I think.
Yep.
right.
It's little things like that. It's not a huge difference, but
I know, I've told most GMs like either change the body stat or will stat or just give it the higher HP and make it a harder encounter. Whatever.
One
Yeah.
thing I'd like to do with the Mooks is let me see if I can.
And then, really quickly, one other thing that I was thinking is just, I think it would be more intuitive if the critical injuries were items that you could drag to the sheet. I think that would make it easier to build a table out of as well, and just quicker, so that you don't have to be like, oh, I got a critical injury. Let me go find the PDF, copy and paste its description, and then, oh, you can get rid of it. But what if you get it like the next time and you don't want to have to go through that whole process again? It could just be something that like GMs just like build in their compendiums, and then they just exist forever.
Can you can you export roll tables or no?
I believe so.
I think you can.
Yeah.
So I mean, if they can export roll tables, then as long as they have the capability to pull from a roll table and apply a critical injury, I think to me it belongs more there rather than as an item.
Right.
yeah, look at my roll tables now. Yeah, so it does have export data for the roll table. So if that's what you can do, that'd be great.
Yeah, are you referencing the like macro you wrote that, kind of just pulls from a roll table?
Yeah, so the macro I wrote, how you get the data from the roll table is entirely up to you. The key point of that is actually calling the add critical injury. So however those arguments get populated to make that call to that character is the important aspect, right?
Right. It just
So-
seems like to me, in terms of user face, it would be easier to set that up in like a nice card that was designed to look like a critical injury, as opposed to like having to put it into that one line
Were you thinking,
in
like,
a
is this
in the role
Sorry.
table? You know what I'm talking about? Like you have to like just put like a whole bunch of text into a one line text edit box.
let me pitch a feature. Like, what if we assume that the GM puts together a rollable table that has the critical injuries in there that they want,
Yep.
and then they can go and click that little plus next to critical injuries, and instead of putting in like an entry at a time, they can just cite the injury table or something. And so when they get a critical injury, it just rolls on that automatically or something instead. I just made that up, but is that closer to what you were looking for?
Oh, like click this and then basically have a button here that says pull from table and then allows you to select the table.
Right.
Yeah, I was just saying that the way that we have to set up these tables currently is you would have to, like you have to put all this data into a table, and this text box is much more convenient than a table. If it like in terms of interface for inputting that data instead of typing like name colon blah 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 effects colon a whole paragraph all into a one line text edit box is like kind of intense, and it looks very like codey for people that aren't comfortable with that.
You're right.
And my other question would be, if it's a card, could you have the effects automatically be applied as well? Like say collapsed lung, it gives you -2 to your move and affects a base save. Because I think just from the roll table, that's not possible. I mean, I know nothing about coding, but
you're right.
The in terms of like it changing your move and stuff like that, I think that's in has to be like in the larger context of just items and cyberware and all these different things that can like affect your rolls. I think that would have to be a part of like the active effects investigation. I mean, but it would allow that if a critical injury was an item, because items can have active effects. I'm almost positive. So that would kind of already feed into that.
Making an item, like in the UI, I don't know if we would call it an item, but it does make more and more sense the more I think about it.
Right, and then you could.
I mean, it works great now. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I do like it a lot, but it's just, like you get this broken arm, okay, you fix it, and then, 10 minutes later you get another broken arm, and suddenly you have to put in all this information again. It's just kind of.
If it was like an item and you had it in like the list there in the like item directory under the suitcase tab, you could drag it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You could drag a specific one, or you could just like click a button that says like roll. On the table that you set. Just some thoughts I've had.
I mean, can you have the roll tables populate with those items?
Yeah, because I'm look. Can you guys see my screen right now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it looks like I guess you can choose a compendium as a result. So basically, you would choose your critical injuries compendium, right?
Well, if you set it to entity and you type the name of the entity exactly as is in there, so like you pick item, and then if you just put like collapsed lung or whatever in there, and as long as that is an item that exists in your directory, then that becomes a thing that could be rolled.
Yeah, you can also just drag it right onto the table.
Right.
And it would fill that all for you.
Okay.
Nice.
I spent maybe I don't know if I should share this, but I spent a lot of time making loot tables for my NPCs. So like when so I did I spent 7 hours putting in all the items in the game. And then I made rollable tables for like the different categories of items. So like I have a gear rollable table and like a gun rollable table. And then I use there's a mod called better rollable tables, I think.
Yep.
And then you can have and then you can have rollable tables as like things in a table. So you can have like nested tables basically. And so that's how I made like NPC loot, is it just rolls the random crap on there, weighted to stuff that I think like say a dead gangbanger might have. So a lot of drugs or something. And then it just like poops that all out in the chat, and it works really well. The players can click on it and see what's on the remains. I don't have a way to drag it yet, but that'll be like the next step.
So the one thing I was thinking about the Mooks is, so now that we have this section here, I think on the characters is improvement points.
Yes.
I want to get a better understanding of John's combat numbers, because I would like to make this a clickable where you can set the combat number and it automatically randomly generates the Mook. It'll change all the stats on the Mook to whatever that combat difficulty is that he talks about. You guys know what I'm talking about?
Right.
Yeah,
Yep.
definitely.
I know exactly what you're on about. So what I understand with this combat number, it basically follows like the lawman's backup.
Okay.
It basically encompasses like let's say that your bad guy has a gun, right? If you're a normal person, you'd have to look at your reflex and your handgun skill or whatever, and you'd add those and add it to your roll. The combat number is just those added already, and instead of splitting up ref and dex and
Mhm.
blah blah blah, all these different skills, it's just that's basically what they add to almost everything. You know,
Yeah.
they have to roll resist, torture, and drugs. They have a combat number of 11. Boom, that's your combat number. Like, it
Right.
just simplifies combat, and it does have a basis in the actual rules as written, because that's how like lawmen work, I think, and
So
it's
Yeah.
also how some black ice work, I believe.
Okay.
Or something
Yeah.
like that.
So my thought to that is basically have this be a thing where you can set the combat number, and by setting it, it'll go through the entire sheet and change the values of the skills and the stats or whatever, so that it totals what the combat number, so it matches the combat number. So then you can actually click on handgun, and it effectively is using the combat number because it results in like 11 if that's what you set your combat number in too. That makes sense?
Yeah, that could work. I would want to
Yeah.
look into it more, but yeah, I think that would make sense.
There's even like the trauma team on
Right,
page
trauma team has
224.
it. Yep.
Yeah, they're the same thing. So like the doctor's a combat number, or they've all got a combat number of 10.
The combat number Mooks 2, that could be kind of like a simpler sheet, you know, like a different type
Yeah.
of sheet.
Right,
Theoretically.
I was just trying to figure out a way to implement it so that you can create a Mook and then click that and it'll set the stats so that you can use that Mook right away.
Yeah, that might be possibly more versatile as well, just because you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you guys are all talking about how you guys made all these things. Well, so in testing this and troubleshooting some of these people's bugs, man, some of these worlds that I have, the amount of content they put into this thing. Now let me see. Is it this one?
It's like a side benefit of being a developer, right?
Yeah.
Those free content.
Yoink.
Oh no, I'm not going to use any of their stuff, but I'm trying to find. I have to dig that guy. I have to dig the password out of that one to find out. I think this one here has a bunch of stuff too. But yeah, I was just shocked by the amount of content that some of these people have in the thing. And then when I went to go migrate, I was like, holy shit, this is taking forever. That's why I rewrote some of the migrate code to make it go faster.
Nice.
Oh, if the one the password is one that I sent you, it's a very, very complex password.
Well,
It's 1111.
Yeah, there's the I've
Oh yeah, that one's crazy with all those colors. Oh my god.
The colors. Is that Loma's colors?
I don't think this is Lomas's.
Okay.
I forget who, but I mean, the time it must have taken to put all this stuff in.
Yeah, it takes a while.
I'm glad I wrote the migration code, because these people would be killing me if I didn't write the migration code.
Yeah, I mean, when I lost all the item descriptions, I was like biting my tongue. I was like, we really need to find those values. I don't think you understand how important that is to me.
Yeah.
So this is items. Look, these are the actors.
Oh my god.
I mean, this is like
unbelievable.
Wow.
Yeah, this is some serious time.
Yeah, that's like
that's awesome.
I spent about 7 hours doing all of the items, and I have not put in all of the mooks in there. But yeah, looking at that,
I mean,
I
this
estimate
seems
that's
like more
20 to 30
mooks than
hours.
there are. I don't know. I don't know where they got all these.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, this is like.
I think these are some of their own
Yeah, some of them are for sure.
I almost want to ask this person if they have another spot in their game.
Right.
Yep.
Oh, I mean, that's a nice, their fucking
Wow.
landing page looks nice as hell.
This is the scenes.
Oh my god.
Doing night and day.
So do you want to take a guess at which world I use when I'm testing the migration stuff?
Yeah,
Honestly.
that's convenient.
true.
Yeah. So
All right, guys, I think I'm
Yeah.
gonna go to bed, but thank you
That's
for the
awesome.
conversation.
yeah,
Yes, thank you.
I think we covered a lot. Let me find this thing and stop it.
Darren, I got like 2 or 3 little things left that shouldn't take more than a couple of minutes.
Yeah,
can hang out.
yeah, that's no problem. Do you want me to continue recording it or?
Nah, if it's that, whatever. If it's already recorded, if it's still going, then
Yeah,
let's just let it go.
it's still going.
Okay. I guess what I just wanted to get to is figuring out where I can help. Because you guys have probably figured this out, but like it's a pet peeve of mine to be changing code and all of a sudden have the carpet ripped out from under me when other things are going on. So you and Jay work really well together. So I assume that you guys would be pushing CyberDecks and maybe programs or something. So there's plenty of other stuff to work on. Like if you want to give me Mooks or some of these other design elements or module support, or I can even get into net running. I don't really care, but I just want to get a sense of like where can I be useful.
How much do you like CSS?
Not very much, but I can do the Mook sheet if that's where if that's where this is going.
No, I was gonna say the weapons, like the refactoring of the
sure.
the existing one for the armor and the weapons to make it look like like we have in the document in the card, where it shows like the reload, swap ammo, and stuff like that, where it's a checkbox and stuff. So yeah, that would be super helpful.
Okay, I'll focus there then.
Well, what do you want to work on?
I guess for speaking for my game, like the net running stuff would be helpful because I have 2 net runners in my group.
Okay.
So that's why I'm keen on this particular phase. Not having Mooks is a little bit annoying too, so it's like perfect for the next thing to pick. I guess after that it would have been like weapon attachments or something.
Okay. Well, I mean, looking at the net running stuff, so when I'm looking at the net running stuff, I see definitely two things that can be worked in parallel. There's the ability to actually spawn another token and get into the combat, like the whole Black Ice aspect, as well as the CyberDecks and program tracking and that stuff. So why don't we check with Jay and he takes one and you take the other one?
Okay.
I mean, because I'd rather have you work on stuff that you want to work on and you enjoy, right? Rather than just go do like shit we need to get done.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
So like I know one of the things I'm going to work on is I'm going to go through and figure out what functions we have still in the character sheets that need to go to the entities and the items, and try to get that all straightened out, because a lot of it got moved with the macro coding. But I think there's still some stuff that needs to be reorganized. So that's the first thing I was going to try working on.
Okay.
All right, guys, I'm back. Sorry about that. I had to help someone move an entertainment stand.
Hey Jay, so we were just talking, and Jay, not you, was asking as far as like helping out and working, because it definitely gets frustrating when multiple people are working on the same thing. And
absolutely.
right. So I know you want to head up the net running stuff, but looking at the net running stuff, I see two things that could probably be worked in parallel: the CyberDecks and programs, as well as the ability to actually launch an ice or a demon where it actually spawns another instance. So I think those two things could actually be worked in parallel.
Yeah, because before the spawning occurs, we have to have the actor stuff in place, right? So the actor stuff needs to be being built in parallel to the item stuff being built, and then that functionality would be like the next step.
Well,
right?
the ability to have an item spawn something is that code can actually start to be written now, right?
That's true. Like it could be arbitrarily, like it could be
Yes,
a
exactly.
character even. You're
Yep,
right.
exactly. So
If you think about it, there's so much you could do with that. Like you could have an item that encompasses an encounter even, and it just spawns, you know,
so
8 mooks.
so I said I'd rather people work on stuff that they're interested in and get and stuff. So he's definitely interested in the net running stuff. So between those two things, working on the cyber deck and the programs and stuff, and actually spawning the thing, I said for maybe him to take one and you to take the other. So so you guys can figure out which ones you guys want to take.
Well, the first thing I was going to take was starting with redoing the data model to accommodate these things. So adding CyberDex as a data, you know, as an item type and doing the templating and shit. So that's like
Okay.
my next task, right? And that encompassed like the black ice actor as well, and its templating, etc. The very next step after that I think someone should take would be the black ice actor sheet, right?
Well, the core functionality outside of the actor sheet, the functionality of actually having an item spawn an actor, I think is probably going to be a decent amount of figuring out how.
Who wants to take that, by the way?
I don't mind. We're just debating what can be done in parallel and where I can be useful.
Yeah, I do not think you should tackle that until the actor and stuff is done, and the template stuff and both the actor types are done, and that should be done last. Like I really think that would be the best way to do it.
Okay.
Like do that. The items get the templating done first, then split. One person builds out the actor sheet, right, for the black ice with all of the data points, including like the little check boxes that say, is this a demon? Is this not a demon? What actions can it take? Whatever we think the black ice should have. And then someone else heads up the program side of it with all the little settings check boxes, right? And then in parallel to that, once those 2 things are done, really 3 if you count the template changes. Once those 3 things are done, there's a lot more parallel, like you said, like the actor spawning, the loading and unloading of things into a cyber deck, the like all of that can be done in parallel after that. So it would be, let me write this down.
Jay's already putting it.
Yeah, go to the next steps at the bottom of this section.
Thanks. Yeah,
Yep.
template data is set up. Actor spawning
Go ahead.
would be set up template data. I'm trying to do this in steps. Set up template data, and then this would be actor sheet and plus item sheet, and then the next step would be spawn actor from item sheet plus what was the other one? Loading, unloading programs into CyberDeck.
Those can be
Is the
2
plus-
different things.
Yeah, does the plus mean in parallel or at the same time?
In parallel, like that's what
Okay.
I'm trying to accommodate here.
Okay.
So like these are each one of these is a thing that could be done in parallel. What else could be done here? I mean, in parallel at this stage too. I mean, unless we want to do it afterwards, and this would be like net action tab. Some question marks because I don't really honestly know what all that's going to entail. Am I missing something? Set up the template data. We build both the sheets and their functionality. Then we build the spawning of actors. Then we build the loading and unloading in parallel.
Then we also need the functionality, right? Resing and deresing, the tracking of the states and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, that can be here. State handling per
program
actor.
State handling.
Within CyberDeck.
Right.
Which I really kind of wanted to be in this net action tab, right? Like, so as a player, I could like click a up arrow or down arrow to up or down the res or whatever.
Yeah. So we need the logic to actually do it and handle on the model. And then we need the net action tab is basically the UI to actually use all the shit we just did, right?
Yep, exactly. So on model, very important. Good. Plus extras. I'm sure we're going to think of some extra things that need to be done here.
Yeah. So since you both are and have interest in the net running stuff, I figured you guys can divide and conquer on the stuff there. The first thing I'm gonna do is I want to go back and take a look at the code, make sure we have functions where they belong on the appropriate entities, items, actors, and do some cleanup in that regards. I'm going to also check to make sure that we follow the naming standards that are that we talked about earlier for existing functions. So I think I can do all that while you guys are doing the net running stuff, because I don't think I think a lot of the stuff that you guys are going to be working on aren't actually going to be making calls back to the actor or the existing items and stuff. So I think it'll be a good time to go through and clean all that up.
Yeah, that's actually a really good idea. You're right. There shouldn't be anything on this that touches. No. Yeah, no, there's nothing.
So I'm going to try to go through and try to do a cleanup on that stuff. So that's what I'm going to take the first thing. And then
after net running's done, that's when I want to get together with you and we'll pair on the Mooks sheet stuff, so we can at least identify a plan. Because like, you're right, there is going to be, because of the way the styling is, no matter which way we do this, there's going to be some shenanigans. I don't understand how, with the way we did this, I don't even see how anyone could easily come in and create like a module that changes this, because if what you're saying is correct, like this actor sheet is brought in by Foundry and we're putting things into it. That means if they use this in any capacity, all of this shit's still going to get piled into it and get used.
Yeah.
So it sounds like, Jay, I'll wait for your signal after setting up the template data.
Yeah.
In the meantime, I'll work on the weapon cards at the top of this list.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. If you could just give me like a couple of days to get ahead, and then maybe I should have it. Ideally, I'd like to put a deadline on it for myself by this, like, what are we at?
Well,
By the 20th.
Yeah, so before we put the deadline, because I'm assuming the deadline means merging it into dev.
Yeah, like for my template changes, merge to dev would be the 20th.
Right. So when do we want to merge dev to master? I'm assuming before the 20th.
Yeah, absolutely. If you guys, I've been listening to the chat a little bit, and it seems like test wise, like everything is pretty solid in dev right now as it is. Is there anything that immediately needs to get hammered out? Or
yeah, I have a fix in for because the collapsible sections. So the way right now in dev, if you pin something, it resets the freaking collapsible sections. So I have a fix for it. It's a merge request that's out there right now. That's the only one I know about. I mean, no one else has reported anything else.
All right, and then I want to ask, what's the general feel from like all the other devs and everybody else that's involved? Is everything still positive? Is anyone like, there's no dissent, any worries?
Well, I think we're starting to get some traction. Like we're starting to get some additional people committing. Like the FN Weather, he made some recent commits.
Yeah,
that's Ben King.
Okay.
Twiglet, I think, has been helping a bit too. That's good. And none of this has been bad. No one's like sneaking in their own little, like, everything's been on track with like the vision and stuff. Like everyone's really contributing, not just trying to change things. Like there's a difference between like people committing to be helpful and fix bugs and people just like arbitrarily wanting to change it because it's open source, right? And it's not to dismiss ideas, right? But we, like, in some way we have to like champion like what the original vision was to keep it on track.
Hang on 1 second. I'm gonna. I think we're done with the content. I'm gonna stop the recording. Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.